second of 3 guitars I'm doing for Matt. This is a Memphis bass. It looks like a P-bass. And it's got some nice body carving. I forgot that it only has 3 strings. So he's given me a set of strings to put on it. Long scale plus electric bass strings, precision flatwound. And well, that's pretty amazing sound right there. There's a lot going on here. I'm not going to be able to do a sort of a pre-setup with the old strings, much of one, but I can do what I can. But once I put the 4th string on, it's going to change the setup a lot. So I'll do a preliminary setup on the relief and the action and all that good stuff, and then take it from there. One thing I notice is this is like a straight neck. There's no neck angle here, so it's sort of flat. It's parallel to the fret fingerboard. And these strings look like they're wound from the bottom up, which means there's no break angle going over this nut. So that's one of the first things I'll change. The exception being here, of course, where the keeper ensures that there's a break angle. So that's going to lead to all kinds of silliness, string buzzing or whatever. Yeah, like that. That's just too low probably, but it's exacerbated by this no break angle condition here. This means that I can just like pull this out of the nut and pull it over and crazy things happen. I have it plugged into this amp. It's not a bass amp, but I should get something out of it. I'm not getting anything. Check the volume and tone, even go backwards from what you would expect. I don't get anything. Wiggle this a little bit, not getting anything. So I tested by plugging into this other guitar here. The amp's working okay, the cable's okay. So I think we have a wiring problem we have to take care of here. My plan is to see what shape the neck's in at the start. So I put the trusty straight edge along here, and I can just see that around the 8th fret there's a ton of clearance. 17 and an 18. That makes 35. I want to have a rough idea of where the relief is now. Yeah, so that sort of goes. It's a little tight. 34 might be the right. We'll tighten it a little bit and see how it behaves. What I need is a 5mm Allen wrench. I don't want to chop this new one up. That's part of this nice set. I do have a couple of separate Allen wrenches. This one I think came with a build kit for some dresser or something, and it measures 5mm. So what I'm going to do is use the Dremel tool, abrasive cutoff wheel, to cut it short so that I can get it into the truss rod to be able to adjust the truss rod. That's how you cut through hardened steel. It's not a perfect right angle, but we'll see if it gets into the truss rod adjustment just fine. Using a file to true up this cut surface, make it more of a right angle cut, and also should be handy for knocking off the sharp edge. So with the cut off Allen wrench, this is the fit I get. Fits in there perfectly. Alright, so that's about little over 1/6 of a turn, and we'll see what we have for measurement. Having tightened the truss rod a little bit, 8th fret, 20 thousandths just passes. So the before measurement on action was around, I'd say, 1/8 of an inch or so. Spec is 3/32, and I'm getting close. This is 93 thousandths. Here's the, still got a ways to go. Of course, after I make, so that's 4.5 full turns. After I do this, I have to recheck the relief. Now it turns out we want the relief to be 12 to 14 thousandths at the 7th fret. So this is the 13 thousandths of an inch. Feeler gauge, 7th fret, and it just barely goes. The next step for me is to check the electronics and see what's going on there. And then we have to deal with this. Yeah, so this is the way the strings were wound onto the machine heads, the tuning posts, however you want to call them. And they need to wind down, not up. So that gives really no break angle over the nut. That's a problem. And the nut is loose, so it's going to have to be glued in there when we get it in the right spot. There we go. Something like that. So I've already wound this 4th string down the correct direction. Thought I'd show you the steps. All I have to do is pop the string off, get it started going down, and just make sure that it winds down, and then retighten it. That's going to establish a break angle across the nut that holds the nut down, holds the string in place, and I'll be able to get a more accurate measurement of action. Now with 3 of the 4 strings tuned up to pitch, I'll recheck relief. Remember, I've got something of a break angle here now, so action is more possible to measure. As far as relief, here's the 7th fret, and the 13 goes under, and it just gets a little snug. So that hasn't changed. Now as far as action, let's get a look down here. See, if I use the 24, 23, 22, and 21, they add up to about 92 thousandths. And we want 3/32 at the 17th fret, which is here. Yeah, so that's a little low now. Credit proper string break angle for making that change. That's a little sharp. Closer to pitch. Okay, so that's just about right on. Okay, so relief and action look roughly correct for 3 of the 4 strings on here. So I think the next thing for me to do is to check out the wiring and see why we're not getting signal through here. Oh, and there's a broken wire there. There we go. Yeah, right off the bat. Yeah, so this is the broken wire. If these pickups are connected together, this could just be a broken ground wire that's supposed to go up here, and that would be an easy thing to fix. Alright, so the good news is this black wire is just a simple return lead from the pickup while the solder hardens. Well, I think it's a pretty good solder joint. Let's see how that sounds through the amp. Next step is to dress the frets and check the nut with 4 strings on. So in order to dress the frets, we need to know the radius of the fingerboard. I could make a guess, but why don't we get the strings off and we'll go and make some measurements. As far as the neck radius goes, it looks to me as if it's about a 10-inch radius up here near the nut and about a 12-inch radius down by the bridge, down by the end of the neck. So I can kind of work a 10-inch up in this region and blend it to a 12-inch that I've worked down in this region. And I can start working the 12, looking for the way it cleans up down here. And I would expect it to hit mostly the center of these frets. But when I'm up here, I can start rocking it a little bit on purpose and try and maintain that. I call it a conical radius, so it's a slightly smaller radius up here than it is down here. That's done to reduce fret out typically at the higher registers. I have to adjust the truss rod to get the neck straight with no strings on it. There's a little bit of dish left in the neck. I just grabbed a 2/1000 shim, feel gauge, and it very easily passed under broad swaths, certainly from like the 3rd to the 12th fret, something like that. So that means I need to tighten the truss rod a little bit. So I go this way with it. Oh boy. I think we have it here. I was confident enough I went ahead and removed the Allen wrench. You want to make sure there's no back bow. Back bow would show by this would go like a seesaw over a central fret. That's not happening. And it doesn't go there or there. It goes there, there. So it passes under 2 frets basically. And if I went much further, I would establish a back bow. We don't want that. There's probably, you can kind of tell by the way it's riding that there's probably, there's room down here. So what do we do about that? We've got, well, that's a fall off anyway, right? Which can help avoid fret buzz for relatively low action. That's commonly done on fancy 6 strings for gunslinger low action. And it doesn't go there at all. So I would basically call this good. It's just a tiny bit low for a couple frets here. It falls off here, and you can't fit a 2/1000 shim or feeler stock anywhere along where my fingers are right now. So that's good. So to get an idea of how the fret's cleaned up, I'll give you a little flyover here. We notice a little bit here, that's basically a worn spot. And I was rocking the call pretty good up here to get that 10-inch radius. So it cleaned up nicely all across these frets for the most part. Right here there's a low spot, and that should be in the 12-inch radius territory. A little bit of a spot here that needs to clean up still. And then when we get over here, this guy's a little bit low. So that's okay, that tails off more. based on the width of the flats that I see left here, and this only is like maybe a 1/2 of an inch taken off. This is the 4/0 steel wool, and I just tear off a hunk. Hopefully this is a better view. This is after the 4/0 stainless steel wool, I should say. 4/0 steel wool. Nice, bright, shiny fret wires, and they've been leveled and crowned. So I'm going to start with the treble side of the neck. We want to put a bend at the end of the string before it goes into the tuning peg. But I can see that I would benefit from doing a little equalization of these screw heights and put a little lubricant underneath where the jack screws are going to sit. Alrighty, what I want to do is get just a little bit of petroleum jelly under these jack screws so that they have a chance to adjust without binding. This isn't the most elegant way to apply it, but I'll get some there and then I'll try to spread it around to where it needs to be. So I managed to get lubricant on here where it's needed. We'll wipe off some of the excess and leave sort of a thin smear of petroleum jelly. Okay, so now we thread the E-string through the tail piece up over the ridge saddle. Measure, this is going to the last tuning post, and we want to measure 2 additional tuning post distances before we cut. But also before we cut, we'd like to put a crimp I've already made the bend, but it's worth double checking. And so I've got a solid two distances between posts there. Now I can make the cut and just leave a little bit of an L shape, and that'll go down into the hole. of course, we're always going counterclockwise on these tuning machines. And we want to make sure that the string is winding down. So as a reminder, this nut is still loose. I'm going to glue it in, but before I do, I want to make sure that the nut slots are the right depth for each string. Let's get the second string on. Okay, so here we have the first string tuned up to G, and we have second string tuned up to B. And then we still need to put in the A string and the E string. Okay, now after stretching each string pretty substantially and having gotten to a point where most of the stretching has occurred, that's a G, that's a little flat, that's a D now, there's an A. So these are pretty well stretched, but now I want to press over the bridge saddles just enough to get a set here. Let's get a look at that now. So the pressure is just about like that to establish a break angle over that bridge saddle. And if we recheck tune, that's a little flat now. Of course, we still haven't set intonation, so we don't want to do any serious kinking of the string. Okay, so this is not in playing position, but it's tuned up to pitch right now. And we can go back through and we can double check all our measurements. Relief should be, well, it might be a little bit different, right? So we'll check relief. We'll check action, and we will check the nut height, and we will check intonation. So a 13 thousandths of an inch feeler gauge just goes at the 7th fret. Perfect relief. I will double check the action. So this combination is about 92 thousandths. 94 thousandths would be 3/32. And I can sound the note, let the string vibrate lightly over the feeler gauge on that fret. This is a slightly better idea of what it looks like. There's not a lot of play there. So I could come down a little bit. I think I will come down a little bit, but I'm not going to push it too hard. Jack screws. So I'm going to come down about a half a turn on each. Could probably go a little bit lower. Not on that side. Let's try it out like that and see how it behaves. Alrighty, before doing intonation, I want to check the nut slots. And I'm shooting for 22 thousandths between the first fret and each string as a starting point. And we're just about there on the fourth string. We're just about there on the third string. Coming from the other side. And that's just about right on the second string and on the first. Now, the other measurement we want to look at is if we fret at the third fret, which actually, when you're holding the strings against the third fret, you're also holding them down against the second fret. I think you can see that. So they're essentially being held down against both the second and third fret. There should be just a little gap there, and that's exactly what we have. There are different ways to measure that. I usually look for 3 to 5 thousandths of an inch. Okay, so that passes maybe a little easily, and there as well. I'm not going to lower the grooves in the nut if I have on the high end, because it passes on the 20 thousandths zone. That just catches really in the first and second. I think that's fine. I went through a test playing session and everything played great. I see no intonation problems whatsoever. So it's time to glue in the bridge, the nut, this thing here. And to go about that, I want to make a 50-50 mixture, roughly, of tight bond and water. And I have a dental pick here, and I can combine that with a toothpick. Gotta find my toothpicks. And I will back off the tension on the strings and put in just enough glue to hold the nut in place. So a touch of tight bond in here, and if I'm smart, I'll rinse that out instead of just clipping it back down. And then just a little water. Roughly 50-50. So I need to take the tension off the string, so I do 1 half turn, 2 half turns, 3 half turns. And that is plenty loose. And I'm getting sort of a slurry of tight bond, dilute tight bond down in here. That should be good. I can then just mop up the excess that squirts out like that. And before it sets, I want to get this out of here. These guys. And that's gluing the nut in. So we're looking at intonation, and I have tuned this in playing position. There's my E string, my A string, my D string, and my G string. So starting with G, 12th fret, D string, 12th fret, A string, 12th fret, E string, 12th fret. So that's the intonation. It's great. Alright, the dog's been going crazy. Hopefully she'll mellow out a little bit. Let's have a listen to this bass now that it's set up. So it's got a nice low playing action, only buzzes if you slap. I pronounce it playable, wonderful, fantastic. Ciao, baby.